Hey everybody, Mike with Games Play Badly, and today on Session 0 I have Billy Blue, who is not only an amazing artist, but has developed his own game called TLDRPG. It's a very simplified rule set, quick to play, easy to learn, and it's not based off anything as far as settings, so you can put it wherever you like to. Simple skill base, simple dice pooling, and it sounds fantastic. I can't wait to play it myself. Fun thing about that is there's a Kickstarter coming soon, and I will have all that information down below. As always, I have my Gem Firefly shirt on. This one says kindness is contagious, and with the current state of the TTRPG space with the OGL stuff and everything, I think it's really important that we all remember to be kind to one another. Would like a shirt like this or something completely different, or home goods or mugs or whatever you like, make sure to go up to gemfirefly.com and put in our code BADLY15, BADLY 15 for 15% off your order. Also have something very special. I'm going to try and yes, it's this one here. Right above me over here is my amazing lit dice. It's a polyhedral dice that has an LED in it. It was custom painted and created just for me. That was from just over Works of Whimsy Studio. So check out Works of Whimsy Studio if you want to find all sorts of really cool stuff, whether it be something like that or has little storage boxes, and she has a whole thing about books. So she has all these miniature books that she creates that are storage elements and all sorts of really cool things. So Works of Whimsy Studios.com. I always say worksofwhimsy.com, and that doesn't work. So either way, Billy is right around the corner. I can't wait for you to meet him. That interview starts now. Hey, Billy, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not sure, people who aren't familiar with you, you are an artist, a digital artist as well. And your website I will have down below, so that way you can go check out your amazing artwork. But you are here more specifically to talk about a game that you created called TLD, as in too long didn't, you know,
Role-playing game.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. TTLDRPG.
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
Yes. Yes. There you go. There you go. It's TLD for short. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So your setting is of your own creation. So those people are looking for not D&D or an alternative D&D. This falls right in there. And there
Yeah.
is a Kickstarter coming out for the February 1st, and this video will be before that period of time. And I'll have links down to that campaign down below. But part of the reason why it's called TLD is because it's a rules light system. Why don't you tell me more about that?
Yeah, exactly. So we all love our big games with all the rule books and everything. You know, we've all had that, but sometimes you need something a little quicker, a little easier to get into, especially if you're trying to bring other people into the hobby. I think it's really, really a good thing there. But sometimes you just want something that you can sit down with friends and quickly bang out your characters and just start playing in a few minutes. And that's kind of where I took this game, the direction that I took this game in. I wanted something fast and flexible, but still really fun.
Yeah. So from the standpoint of the game itself, is it a class-based system, or why don't you tell me more about the setting?
Well, there's not a lot of setting. It's more just the game itself, but the game is a dice pool based system because I just like dice pools, and there's no classes. So the way it works is you have your 3 base attributes, and then depending on the points you put into each of those attributes, you then buy your abilities that correspond with those attributes. And then that's basically your whole character.
Oh, wow.
And so you have a big master list of abilities. So if you wanted to play a sneaky thief rogue character, you would just start plugging in the abilities that correspond with that, or if you wanted to play a wizard, hey, there's fireball and there's zap and there's heal, And what I found is that it gives you a lot of flexibility because the way the abilities are written, they can kind of be expressed in different ways. So like one of the guys in my game group, he's a pretty standard wizard character, but he has like zap and heal and whatever. And then another character I have, he's more of like a paladin. So when he casts heal, even though it's the same exact spell, just it has a little bit of a different feel to it because of the way he's playing, the way he's role playing the character. So, and that's kind of what I was going for, is that kind of, I wanted it to be based around the players and not the characters, because I really wanted to involve the players and make them feel like this is my character and I can kind of create whatever I want and I'm not limited by the game. I don't have to worry about, oh, my racial bonus conflicts with this, or, I have a proficiency in this, not in that. And I kind of wanted to just make a really flexible system that could be used by two different people in two different ways, even though it's the same base materials. So this is what I came up with.
Yeah, that sounds great. I like the idea of being able to not effectively customizing your spells where they're completely different, but from the standpoint of how they're presented, they can be different, which is not game breaking. It's completely customizable based off the player's view of how their character would do something.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of the abilities, they have a lot of utility as far as like, you can use it just as a straight up whatever, but if you get a little creative, maybe you can use it in a different way too. So I like that kind of flexibility in my gaming in general. Designing this game made me realize that, like, as a person, I don't usually care for labels and being put in boxes. And I do care for flexibility, self-expression, and things like that. And I realized, I came up with this game system that kind of encapsulates that. It lets the player play how they want, within this loose format of the rules, so that everyone is going in the same direction. So,
yeah, it's very much like your artwork. I mean, when you think about it, it's going to be completely interpretive. I mean, I can look at something you're doing and interpret it differently, just like this game system. The abilities can be reimagined or reinterpreted. And it really, it's kind of fun for the DM. You got to think, that if somebody comes up with something that's a wacky way to use something and it sounds totally plausible, why not?
Yeah, that's one of the best parts about, I think, tabletop games is when someone surprises you. If I wanted to just have it handed to me and not really get surprised, I'd probably just be reading someone's book, like someone's novel. Right. It's like, I want that interactive, collaborative surprise factor. And that's, role-playing games are just like the perfect facilitator for that.
So that being said, what's the most creative way somebody has used a skill in your play testing?
You know what? It's more, I'm finding the combination of things. I have especially one player who tends to be a bit of a min-max metagamer. And
we all have one.
We all have that. Yeah. And one of the things I like about playing with him is that since I don't think that way and he does, he finds things in the system that I didn't think of. So, like, unintentionally, he has revealed several like power strategies. If I pick this ability plus this ability, it actually gives me 2 extra mana, and I'm like, that's genius. I didn't think of that. And then that makes me kind of design around that and thinking like, well, okay, if that's a build, that's a build. It's fair enough. How am I going to have a game that can kind of anticipate that, or at the very least handle that load without breaking gas? So those are kind of the biggest surprises that I like, is when someone just thinks about gaming a little differently than I do. Because I'm more of kind of a straightforward, like my typical character is just like a fighter or something. I hit it with my stick, which is so silly, but it's just, that's the way I think about my gaming characters usually. And it's really nice to play with other people who think differently,
I agree with you. When you started talking about the min-max, meta guys, and believe me, I have them. I've played with them. They can be frustrating, but in some ways they also expose some possible failures within the game itself. So, I mean, they're the guys who are going to find those game breaking, you didn't see I couldn't do this. So
exactly. Yeah. It's not in the rules. It's like,
right. Exactly.
You're right. It's like the metagamers and the rules lawyers. Those are really helpful playtesters,
They are, but man, they are a pain in the butt to have at a table
they are.
sometimes.
They are. But you know what? I'd rather have them be a pain in the butt pre-launch instead of, 100 different people buying the game and saying, excuse me, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
So,
no, I get it.
Yeah. So good times.
Absolutely. So your Kickstarter is coming up pretty quick. How long have you been developing this?
Off and on for about a year, because my original plan was to do it for last Zine Quest in February, but I had some other projects come up. And the group that I play with regularly and I'm play testing with, it's actually the crew over at Yogdu Games. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They did Tomb of Immolation and Pork in the Void, which just came out, Skin Job, things like that. And they have been the ones who have been helping me play test it. And we were originally play testing it about a year ago, but then some other projects got in the way. And I just said like, well, let's focus on this. This needs to happen sooner. And then we'll come back to mine. So a couple months break and then we got back to it. So yeah, off and on for a little over a year, I would say, as far as the game itself. And it actually started as a 2-page game. And I don't know why for my first game design, I tried to, condense it down to only 2 pages because that's a whole other set of challenges.
Sure.
But I do think it was a good idea because it forced me to start my design process from a very lean point of view. And I tried to kind of cut out all the fluff. And even though the game has grown necessarily since then, I've always kept that quality in mind. And like one of the phrases that I always keep in mind when I'm making edits is keep it lean, if the whole point is to make a game that is short, but doesn't feel lacking, then you can't pack a bunch of stuff in there just to have it,
Right,
So
right.
I like it to be kind of efficient. I think that's another big word for me is efficiency. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine it being, okay, here's the mechanics. You add it to whatever setting you want.
yes.
And just kind of move that around and it will work within those confines.
Yeah. And it's like, obviously it's coming from a fantasy kind of background. So, a lot of the language and the tropes are in there that kind of make it fantasy based, but it's also the kind of thing where if I really wanted to play a sci-fi game, like it's not that hard to adapt it. And instead of saying like, okay, instead of saying like, oh, I cast fireball or whatever, it's like, oh, well, I shoot a flamethrower at you, like it's,
Right.
it's pretty adaptable. And so
Sure.
I think that a decent system should be kind of adaptable in that way, especially if you're trying to make something with the express intention of it being flexible. So one of my plans, hopefully, is if this coming Kickstarter does well enough and there's enough interest, that maybe I can do like a sci-fi version down the road, or something like that. Because I have a lot of interest, obviously, like everyone, I have a lot of interest besides straight fantasy. So it'd be nice to do that kind of stuff,
Well, it also helps. I mean, if all this stuff is lean, then it's easy to go ahead and kind of bolt other things onto it.
Yeah. Exactly.
If the underlying core mechanics are solid, you can go anywhere with that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why there's so many like tiny D6 games, for example, just because that core mechanic is so efficient and solid that you just stick whatever on there, or the, what's it called that Free League uses. That's a really nice system. And it's not exactly small, but it's modular, I guess.
Right.
And it's able to be adapted to other things. So like, I mean, I'm looking at my shelf. I have Tales from the Loop. I have Vaesen or Vaesen or however you say it, and I have a couple of I have Alien RPG, and it's like, they're all basically the same game, but with some kind of extra work done around the edges to fit with the theme, but also to kind of just make more cohesive sense as far as the game and the setting is involved. So that's kind of my background as far as mentally where I come from when I'm trying to design something. I wanted to have those kind of qualities.
Absolutely. And I think people will appreciate brevity when it comes to some of the rule sets, just because it can get pretty crunchy. I know I personally love my crunch, but I also, because sometimes I feel if it's not crunchy, then I'm not playing, just because I've been brainwashed all these years. But
yeah. Well, I mean, like 50 years of D&D, that's going to have an effect on everything,
society
So-
in general, apparently.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of neat that it's really exploded in the last few years.
Yeah, I
5 or
like that.
10 years.
I'm sad. I'm sad that they have basically shot themselves in the foot multiple times in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. It's
Um,
amazing to watch, man.
It is. I mean, it's kind of like watching Elon Musk take over Twitter. I mean, how do you
Yes.
completely ruin an IP in the course of 3 weeks? It's
I mean,
flabbergasting.
I don't know how you put more than one foot in your mouth at a time,
Yeah.
but they seem to be doing it really well, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, as sad as it is, I also kind of was wondering the other day, maybe this is a silver lining because it like instantly made people start looking for other games.
Yes. Yeah.
And now here I have another game, you know, and it's like, well, that could be a good thing for the little guys like us, you know, who
Agreed. No,
don't have a
absolutely.
bajillion dollars. Yeah. So it's kind of a good, bad situation.
I interview a lot of different creators, and some of them create stuff for 5e and D&D
Uh-huh.
compatible system, whether it be the SRD or SRD based or whatever.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of people who have really good independent games.
Yeah. Yeah.
That there was a small microcosm of TTRP or the TTRPG space, which was people who were ardently avoiding any type of Wizards of the Coast or D&D like product and looking for
Uh-huh.
something completely different.
Yeah.
And that little nucleus of people who were kind of keeping some of those creators alive is growing rather quickly. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you're going to see a renaissance in TTRPGs over the next 6 to 8 months, just because of so many people's reticence to deal with D&D, which I hate that's happening. And
Mhm.
also the one D&D movement, you know,
Mhm.
is its own thing. So, but I think you're going to find a lot of really talented creators finally get some due, you know,
Yeah.
because
Agreed.
they're all, everybody I've interviewed, they've all been really good games. It's just trying to pry people away from the Critical Role
Yeah.
D&D universe type thing.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not shitting on Critical Role. That's just,
Yeah.
but it's just they are the biggest target because without them,
Mhm.
this D&D Renaissance would have never happened.
Yeah. Well, that's totally true. And it's an interesting situation because if you think about it, game was basically dominant for decades, right? And
Right.
then it actually started to get more popular and, you know, things like Stranger Things helped a lot, you know,
Mhm.
and it started to kind of become a little mainstream and a little hip. And that a continued exposure, I think, helped lead to, you know, the guys that you're talking about, like who say, okay, D&D is everywhere. We know D&D. Let's try something different. And that's
Sure.
where these kind of
Right.
smaller guys kind of started to grow up. And then they go and shoot themselves in the foot. And it's like all these people are like there with products and primed and saying like, hey, you want to try something new? It's like, it's kind of all happening in a very
Yeah.
fortuitous order, you know? So
Yeah,
it's a really interesting climate to be
it really
designing
is.
into, you know?
It really is. And
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what comes out of this. I'm
Yeah.
as a longtime D&D fan, I'm very sad to see it happen, but I understand why people are mad.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And honestly, you know, I feel like it's gonna be fine. And most likely WotC and Hasbro are gonna just say like, we don't want to kill this product. So let's do what we need to do to make it profitable and popular and just keep
yeah.
this engine going, you know? And I think that's in the end, I hope that's gonna just be a benefit for everyone, players included, you know,
Yeah.
because
In all
they're gonna
honesty, I
fix
think
what they
they
need
had
to
it. It
fix.
was already done. It
Yeah.
was already done. If they just left well enough alone, I think they would have been okay. I understand their need to go through, and they were trying to protect their IP by being able to have control over shutting down people who are doing hate speech
Yeah.
and Nazis and racism and homophobia and all this other stuff
Yeah.
within the game space. But in the
Yeah.
process, it really hurt those people who are doing everything the right way. So,
Yeah.
but yay,
Yeah.
yay for you!
Hey. So the game is actually pretty far along. I mean, the rules have been written for a long time and we've been playtesting it on and off for a while now. I actually have another playtest scheduled tonight after this. And so all the changes that are happening are like kind of minor changes around the edges
Mhm.
just to tighten things up. But yeah, the rules are pretty much done. I have the layout guy standing by
Mhm.
to basically just say, just send it to me when you want and he'll take care of it. The next major thing is the artwork. And obviously that's my department.
Mhm.
So I'm going to be handling almost all of the art in the book. I have some other people that I hope will also be contributing just because I
Mhm.
like their work. So, but that part, like, that's the part that I am most confident about as far
Mhm.
as time frame, because I know me, I know my speed, I know what I can do. So
Sure.
I know I can, you know, sit down in one day and, you know, X amount of pieces that will take care of this many chapters and then the next day. And so the game is actually pretty far along. I think the delivery date I have set is like 7 months or something,
Okay.
just because it seemed like a nice kind of a sensible amount of time. And of course that's, pending any outside difficulties like shipping or anything, which you can't really control. But
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty far along and honestly could be wrapped up pretty quickly. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. Hopefully, all the people who are watching today are interested as well. Again, everything starts February 1st.
Mm,
I will have links down below to the Kickstarter when it launches. In the meantime, if you're watching this before February 1st, if you're
that's
watching this before February 1st, go to the website and click notify me. Just
yes,
so that way it gives Billy some idea of who's interested and
it's
make them
really helpful.
happy. Yeah, it
Yeah,
makes them
it does.
happy.
It does.
And those are all good things. And I will be looking for it myself. And I want to say thank you for coming on and telling me all about it. I think it's going to be great. And again, in this new post OGL world, I think we need more games. So thank you.
I agree. I agree. I think that we need more games and we need more voices, I think is
Mhm.
what it boils down to, you know, and the voices that we have now are great and everything, but it's like the more voices we get into the community, the more rich it becomes and just
Mhm.
the more cool stuff we get to see, you know, like there's so many people who I've loved their games. And I never would have even had that experience if I had only focused on the one, you know, guys
Sure.
like Grant Howitt, you know,
Mhm.
Grant Howitt bangs out a one-page game like nothing. And it's so fun and it's so well done. And it's like, if I was only interested in, you know, the giant book, I never would have taken a look at this guy who had
Yeah.
a one or a two-page game. So I think it's really great that we have that kind of an input. And I'm excited to be a part of that, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that because when you start looking at, I look at D&D and systems like it as these epic voyages, right? So, I mean, there's not
Yeah.
really time
Yeah.
to do anything else because you're on the campaign, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and so having something that you can easily whip out and play something
Yeah.
is ultimately helpful. And
Yeah.
a break is helpful, you know, and because
Yeah.
we used to do
Yeah.
that with D&D. We play D&D for a year at a time and say, "Yep, we're going to take a break and play Marvel superheroes or some Palladium
Yeah.
based game or whatever,"
Yeah.
which had their own ins and outs, but it's always nice to have options, and the
Yep.
more options equal voices. So I
Yep.
completely agree with you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also like, you know, when I go to the opera, I wear a tux, and when I go to the store, I wear sweats. It's like sometimes you're just in different moods, or you have different things that you
Mhm.
want to do on game now. So it's like there's not a one size fits all game. You know,
Right.
sometimes you want that epic, grand, you know, 2 year long multi arc quest. You know, and
Sure.
sometimes you just want to sit down with friends and like have a beer and just goofy fun where you're like riding goats or something. I don't know. You know, it's like
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
something different.
I did an interview with somebody who did a Monty Python based game. And
I backed that one.
yeah, yeah. And so
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
actually there's an interview up on my channel with the guys who created it.
I'm definitely gonna
Um
check that out.
yeah, and but what I loved about that game was it was as goofy as you wanted it to be. It was as serious as you wanted it to be. And it was one of those things where you could literally sit around with a couple beers and say, "Hey, let's go ahead and play a round of this." So it
Yeah.
wasn't investing in an epic long adventure. It was
Mhm.
fun for the evening and still had all those TTRPG trappings.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And it's yeah, yeah, because when you think about it, I mean, the whole point of a game or a game night is just to have fun for that night,
mhm,
you know?
sure.
So if the game itself doesn't extend past that, then that's fine. It did its job because it got a couple people together and you have some laughs and that's the whole point, you know?
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, from the standpoint of character setup for your game, seems like
Mhm.
it's relatively straightforward, but that's what you're bringing to the table. The core mechanics are super, super.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's because it doesn't really need to be anything else. I specifically am trying to put the focus on the players
Mhm.
and not the characters. And I think that if you go the other way around where the focus is on the characters, then that kind of instantly necessitates, you know, many more pages of rules
Mhm.
because how are you going to work that character if that's what they're all about? But if you put the
Mhm.
focus on the players, which is where I think it should be all along because that's we're playing the game.
Mhm.
If you put the focus on the players, then you actually can leave a lot of wiggle room in your
Mhm.
rules because you want the players to have that agency, to have those surprising choices. And
Mhm.
you want the players to express things that you never even would have thought of, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And so I think that's really what attracts me to some of the smaller games, like rules like games, or even like what I'm calling rules medium games, you know,
Mm.
is it gives you that wiggle room and that freedom to just ultimately express yourself because what's the point of a role-playing game if we're all playing the same role?
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't disagree at all. So.
Yeah. So if that appeals to any of you listening, like, check it out. Go to the Kickstarter and check it out, because it's a really fun game, and it lets you play the game your way. And like, I gotta say, it's packed with some badass art. So
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I'll link to all your artwork so people can go see it as well. But if you like artwork in books, you're going to get tons of really great artwork. And is this coming out in like basically a zine format?
yeah, it's going to be like a half-page format, or zine format, depending on where you live. There's going to be 2 versions. One is kind of a bare bones version, and it's going to have about 50 pages. And then there's going to be the deluxe version, which is a little over 70 pages. And the base part of that is going to stay the same. The extra stuff is going to just be like for instance, the base version will have a very small like bestiary with just a couple of statted creatures. So you kind of get the idea of like how to stat a creature. Whereas the deluxe one will have many more pages of that same thing, Also, I like random tables. So the deluxe version will have many more random tables than the base version, but you could just pick up that small version and play the game with just that. It's just the extra one, or the bigger one, just has more of that extra stuff in it. And like, speaking of art is, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when you're making a project like this, art is actually usually the biggest budget, biggest chunk of the budget. And that's why, I mean, just to be frank, you'll sometimes pick up a book and some of the artwork is pretty good, because they had to go with like a less experienced artist. Otherwise the book wouldn't have been able to come out,
Right.
Or
that is something hands down I hear from every creator is the main cost in any of these projects is artwork, because artists are artists and they deserve to get paid for their work.
Yeah.
And it's not like they can just churn these things out, unique pieces, instantly. So A, it takes time, B, it costs money. And that's the reason you do see books that only have a few pieces of artwork, because it is so expensive.
And like, a game can be perfectly fun and great, but it will just be a more pleasurable experience if you're turning that page and like every spread has something cool on it. And that's actually what I'm going for, is since I don't have to hire an artist, obviously, I'm just like, let's just pack it in there. Let's have something cool to look at on pretty much every spread that you turn to, so that every time you flip the page, you're like, this is cool. I'm enjoying this book, And it's all going to be made by real people, instead of AI, which is another whole issue, Yeah. And it's funny because so much has happened in our hobby in such a short amount of time, and it's like, we're all trying to find our way, but I can just say for myself and my project, at least, like, I have a skill that I love to use, and I'm going to use it to make the best product I can.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Billy, I appreciate you coming on. All this sounds fantastic. Again, I'll have all the links that anyone needs below. And if you have anything that you need from me, please let me know. I'll be more than willing to help.
Will do.
But I'm super excited about this, and thank you for spending some time with me today.
Oh, thank you. It was a real pleasure. Glad you had me on. And I hope people enjoy the game.
I'm pretty sure they will, just from my standpoint. But I'll reserve judgment for everybody else to take a look at it. But yes, check it out, everybody. And if you like this video and you like what we're talking about and you like the idea of talking to creators, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. And if you want to comment below, by all means. Thanks again, Billy, and we will talk soon.
It was my pleasure. Hit the like button. It's really helpful.